Alright, today I guess I'll be doing some shim work on this 2004 CRF450, and this will cover 2002 to 2006, I believe. You might want to do some back research on that. I'm sure the major changes were made in 07. So I have already removed the gas tank, the valve cover, pulled the spark plug to make it easier to rotate the engine. Already taken the timing plugs out. Honda has them on opposite sides, which is very inconvenient, but you can work with it. So I already have it timed to top dead center on both areas. You can't really see that because, oh yeah, you can. Right there, the hash mark, hash mark, hash mark, hash, and the arrow on this model. So, and newer models will have just the sealing surface. And since the cam is incorporated inside the cam holder, you pull the whole thing out. So right now I do have gap on my in between my cam and my valves. Standard is 0.13 to 0.19 on your intake. The exhaust is 0.25 to 0.31. I do have an excess of gap on the exhaust valve, which concerns me because you never really see that unless, you know, valves are bent, which is very, very concerning, but we're going to roll with it and see if we can get this thing to fire up. Granted, you do not need to take this machine this far apart. I have, because I'm doing multiple things with it. So where I'm at now, since I have my measurements, is 0.05 on the left intake, 0.13 on right intake, and 0.35 on left exhaust, 0.38 on right exhaust. So now the deal is to take the cam out of there so I can actually access the intake buckets and shims. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to remove the cam, or the cam sprocket, from the cam, which is just two 6mm Allen bolts. There's one there, one up there. I will have to rotate the engine to get to that one. But before you do that, you need to take this guy off, just the 8mm on top here, and you'll take a screwdriver in and you're going to tighten to loosen, and then when you reach the end, you're going to put a little bit more force on it and it'll stay. And that's where I have it now, so it's got some play in it. See? And now we're going to remove the cam sprocket so we can get the cam off. So what I'm going to do now is, of course, remove these two screws, and I'm only going to rotate the engine forward to remove the top one, and then I'll roll it back for install. So here we go, I guess. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got the cam sprocket off. A couple things I did not mention is if you don't have your spark plug out, it's going to fight you the whole time. Make sure you have your spark plug out. Another thing too, when you are taking the sprocket bolts off, you will use your ratchet to back yourself up. That way you're not spinning the engine when you're trying to take cam bolts off. You just turn it to, I guess it would be tighty instead of loosey to take it off. I'm just using the same screwdriver I used to release tension on the cam chain tensioner to hold the cam chain in place for now. Now that I have the cam sprocket off, I can now remove the cam itself. This is a little tricky because, you know, well, I guess with the newer models it's more tricky, but this one, the whole exhaust rocker arm comes with it, so that is kind of convenient in the same aspect. But these Unicam designs are very simple, so it's kind of hard to mess them up. You don't want to keep rotating the engine because, you know, just in case. So just rotate forward, back, forward, back. Don't like continuously rotate the engine forward. You might run into an issue where it jumps because the cam lobes are releasing pressure off the intake or the exhaust valves, and it'll jump on you and probably cause a problem. But nonetheless, we're at the point now where we're going to take out these 10mm bolts and, you know, start doing our shim work. So I'll be right back after I get this off. I've got the cam holder off. The cam still intact. Here's your exhaust rocker arm, your decompression lever, intake exhaust shims, well, intake buckets, exhaust shims. The way I do this is I always keep left, left, right, right, being this is the front of the bike, this is the back of the bike, front wheel, rear wheel. So even though my exhaust is back here, I know this is left exhaust and this is right exhaust. The camera's reversed right now because I flopped it around so I can make sure I'm not missing any of this. But if you keep that a habit, you will not ever mix anything up, which is what I think has happened here. So I don't think my exhaust valves are bent. The cam bolts, which if you're watching this, like the longer ones go up front and the smaller ones go in the back. And the way you can tell too is that they'll have the same gap between them. When they go in there, they'll all have the same gap between the head and the sealing surface. So that being said, I feel like somebody just put the shims in the wrong place, because these are way tight, these are way loose, and somebody might have just done that. Not only that, but the shims have no wear on their surfaces other than what was sitting on top of the valve. So I just assumed that somebody did something incorrectly, and this is why this bike was put off to the side and I picked up very cheaply. So what we're going to do here is actually measure our real gaps. Even though this says it's a 2.05 shim, I'm going to measure it with a micrometer. You can use a vernier caliper, or vernier caliper. I just call them vernier because it gets very close to what your real measurement is. But a micrometer will never lie to you. If it's adjusted correctly, it will never lie to you. If you have the extra cash, please invest in a set of these. This will be very exact. You cannot not fuck that measurement. This can. Like if you ever open it up and close it and you notice it's 0.01 or 0.02 millimeters off, that's why. Digital ones are known for that. If you have a dial one, it's much more close, but you still have to adjust it the same way you do these, but it's a one-time adjustment and you rarely do it. So, and I've already made sure that it's in sync, and I've gone and backed it off to get ready to measure these. So what you do is you're going to wipe off your shims, get all the oil off of them to make sure that they're nice and clean, got a nice surface to actually get your measurement on. This says it's 2.05, and I bet you it is 2.05 because, like I said, I feel like this person just put the shims in the wrong spot, and this is why this bike had a hard time starting or had a running issue, and the reason why I picked it up cheaply. So here we are, 2.06. You know, not everything's going to be, oh no, there it goes, 2.05. So it did get back to 2.05. That's our left exhaust shim. So we're running a 205. We're going to write that down on our notes here for all our measurements. So the left one is sitting on a 205, but we have a 0.35 gap. And standard is 0.25 to 0.31. So what we want to do here is we want to close gap with this one. Not extend gap or make a bigger gap. We're going to close it because this is, you know, a bigger gap than what we need. So instead of a 205, I'm going to put a 2.00 in there, and it should bring us to 0.30 or close to that, which is where I'd want to be anyways on the extent of limits. That way you'll have a longer run time, because these Hondas are known for constantly needing shim jobs on the valves. So we're going to try a 210, and I'm just going to, or a 200, I'm sorry. Or, no, a 210. I am correct, because we are making gap. So we're going to increase it to a 210 from a 205. I'm pretty sure I said 200 before because I'm just used to going down and not up. So we're going to go to a 210, and we should have a 0.3 after that. Should have it. This 0.38, let's see where this guy is at. This is the right exhaust shim. Back him up. He's a little bit bigger. Bury him down. And we have a 0.10. There we go. Yeah, 0.10 shim. Or, I'm sorry, a 2.10. So we're sitting on a 2.10 here on the exhaust. So 210, and we want a close gap, so we're going to increase this one. And if we go to a 215, we're only going to be sitting on a 0.33, which is out of spec. So we're going to do a 220, and that should put us at 0.28, which is right in the middle of spec. You know, that's fine. So long as it's as far away from your minimum spec as possible, that's what you're aiming for. That's what you want. That way you have a longer run time before you have to shim valves again. So we're going to try a 0.20, 2.20, I'm sorry, a 2.20 shim on that one. And now we're going to do the exact same thing with the intakes. Something I did not mention before, when you take this guy off, when he comes off, when it starts to break loose, you want to take your hand and put him under it, because my shim buckets came out. And if a shim were to drop down into your engine side, you would have to pull the ignition cover, and you're going to find them most likely stuck to your magneto, if not down in the bottom. But you don't want to waste time, you don't want to waste money, so put your hand underneath it as you take it out of the machine. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and do the measurements on the intakes. These ones are going to be standard, so I will be increasing gap instead of decreasing gap. So I'll be going down in numbers instead of up in numbers like I did with this exhaust side. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm throwing it in this video. So we're starting with our left intake shim. Like so, we're going to wipe him off. Make sure he's nice and clean. He says he's a 1.25. Yeesh. That's getting really close to tolerances. 25, and he is a 1.25. We believe him. We have a 1.25, but we're sitting on a 0.05 gap. So if we were to increase 0.1, we'd be at a 1.35 shim, but we'd be at a 0.15 in our gap, which is as close as we're going to get to the middle of this without going over or staying under. So we're going to try, you know, a 1.15 on this guy. 15 there, and that should put us at 0.15 instead of 0.05. So we're just going to set him right back in that bucket so we don't lose track of what we're doing. And then we're going to take out our right intake shim, wipe him down, and he says he's a 1.25 as well. It is a 0.13, but that's sitting right on the minimum spec, and I don't like that. And we do have a 125 shim right there. So we're just going to give him a 1.30. He was 125, or I'm sorry, a 1.20. God damn, I need to quit drinking so much. We're going to give him a 1.20, and that should take us to 0.18. Puts us the farthest way away from it. So if we do have a running issue in the future, I bet you anything it's going to be the left intake that needs to be adjusted. So now, got to get in the old, wrong drawer, get in the old toolbox, pull out our handy dandy hot cam shim kit. Big shout out to Hot Cams, thank you. I would like one my way, Hot Cams. But pull him out, and we're going to go through him and pick our next ones down. It looks like, oof, we are on the extent, because it looks like the smallest we go is 1.15. So after this, these valves will need to be replaced. They have been stretched beyond their limit. I mean, I should probably replace them now, but this is just a project bike. Get up and running. I will inform the guy who buys the bike how stretched everything is. So, yeah. This is terrible. So anyways, go ahead and pick these shims out, and I'm going to put them in the respective places, and we're going to start going back together. So as soon as I get everything, all the shims in place, I will have you back with me. See you in here in a minute. Alright, here we are, ready to put the cam back on top of the valves. I've already gone ahead and put the shims back on top of the valves. With the cam holder, I like to put the buckets inside cam holder, and then I just hold them in with my fingers as I go down on to the valves. Slide them in place, set it all down nice and decent like, and now we're going to put the bolts in, tighten her down. So hang on one second. Now I am just going off of feel here. Pretty much got it figured out. We're doing this for a very long time. So torque specs, that's up to you. You can look it up. Just don't over tighten it. It just has to be snug, tight, and then a tad bit more. I don't know how else to describe it. So, and then I just go back and make sure that they still have the same tension on them. I'm not gonna bother looking up the torque specs for you, so please refer to your manual. If you don't have one for your bike, you should have one for your bike if you're doing stuff like this. Or anything at all with your bike. You can always reference that for anything. So now that I've got it set down and on there, still have my free play. Of course, the cam has free play on top of the intake valves now, which is nice because they were pretty taut before. And now I'm gonna have to go find my feeler gauges. So I'll be right back. Alright, I went ahead and ran the feeler gauges under. I don't know why I didn't record it. Whatever. It's a long night. Here, have another, sir. That is one tasty adult beverage. So I was able to get a 0.18 underneath both intake valves, and I couldn't get the 0.2 to go under, so we're in spec there. For the exhaust valves, I was able to get a 0.3 underneath one and a 0.28 underneath another, so we're in spec. Finally, we're good. So now we can start going back together with the Cam Sprocket. Oh my goodness, have another. Well, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get set up for that, and I'll go over that with you as I go together with it. So again, give me a minute so I can set the camera up, all that fun stuff. Alright, before I put the Cam Sprocket back on this, I'm going to adjust the decompression lever. It's going to be tight, so might as well adjust this as well. So for this, the spec is 0.35 with, you know, your clearance underneath your exhaust valve. So all I'm going to do is take the 0.30 this one was at and rest it under, and then you can check this guy with another feeler gauge, but it's got to be a 0.35, and see, it's not going under. So what you can do is take an 8mm wrench, break that loose, and adjust with a flathead. But if you got one of these nifty tools, oh man, it turns a two-hand job into a one-hand job. So we're just going to loosen him up a little more. Apparently it's not got a gap at all. Oh, so close. A little more, see? This thing needed to be adjusted big time. So, alright, feeler gauge is finally under, and I'm just going to go down until I have light drag on the feeler gauge. Right there, light drag. So I just hold on to this, or you'll be hanging on to your flathead screwdriver, and you just tighten the lock nut down. Make sure not to allow the center pin to roll. There you go. That is now shimmed correctly. Right, so now we're to putting the cam sprocket on and timing the engine. So I'm gonna get all set up. I'll be right back. Alright, ready to put the cam sprocket back on. I had to reset my timing on the crank back to top dead center. Remember, it's the second mark that goes in line with normal engine rotation, which should be counterclockwise. And then we're just going to try and set this cam chain in here, or cam sprocket in here, and the chain. And then we're going to sit there and rotate it on the cam chain until we get that timing mark lined up. This is being a real big pain in the butt. All right. Holy crap. Big old pain in the butt. All right. Never mind. I just want to get the cam chain on the sprocket so I can rotate it. And it does not want to go on the sprocket. Alright, got it on. Our timing mark is down at the very bottom, so I'm just going to walk the cam chain over the sprocket little by little until I get closer. Maybe another one of those. A couple more links. Looks like one more link. I'm just resting it on the deal there, and the mark's back there, or little arrow. And that is dead nuts, and I'm pulling the tension on the drive side. Then let's re-verify timing. It is rolled slightly off, so I'm just resting the cam sprocket right on the cam, and I'm going to try and get it lined right back up, and that's perfect on the crank, and we are still good on our mark there on the sprocket and the arrow behind it. So now that we're lined up, here comes the real big pain part, which is getting your, damn it, I'll hold this guy while I rotate the cam until this bottom bolt hole and the sprocket bolt hole somewhat line up. And now you can install one of your cam sprocket bolts. Now, I really recommend using red Loctite for this. Make sure you wipe down your bolts and put some red Loctite on it. There is enough room to finesse the other sprocket bolt on from the top, which I'm going to try. Don't want to drop this down into the engine, because then you have to pull the ignition cover off and take it off of your magneto. And I'm just going to screw it all the way down into where it touches the sprocket, like so, and then take the other bolt, cam sprocket bolt, get it covered in red Loctite, and then go from the top and finesse this guy in. It's a two-hand project for this. Maybe, if I can find the hole. That's probably why I don't have kids. Oh, come on. It's being a pain. You really don't want to. And if you have to, you can. Since you got the one sprocket bolt in, you can rotate your engine to expose this to where you can actually put it in from the side, but I chose the difficult path. Okay, got them in, got some threads on them. I'll get a few more before I tighten the bottom one down and then rotate the engine. He's almost snug. There we go. Nice and snug. So, gonna have to back up on the crankshaft bolt. Back up. And tighten this first one. Okay. Rotate the engine. Tighten the other one. back up, tighten it down. And now we're going to go back and re-verify timing before we release the cam tensioner. Ooh. Wrong way. See if I can find the mark. All right, there we are. It rolled past a little bit. Dead nuts and dead nuts. We're golden. Oh yeah. So now that we've got that and we still are timed correctly, we're going to release the cam chain tension on the cam chain down mill. So for this, you're just going to just touch it and it'll tighten up, and re-verify timing one more time before we start rolling this engine around. Looks like we're good. Now we're going to go on normal engine rotation, gurgle gurgle, and verify that everything's good. If it comes to a stop and touches the valves, then you might have a bent valve if your timely or correct, or if your timing is correct, or you're just one tooth off or something like that. Oh my goodness, come on. Just rotating it a few times. Feels good. Feels good. Make sure we're still timed correctly. One more time. All right, we're timed correctly up there. And timed correctly down here. So there you go. Now that you've got that all done, you can go ahead and start going back together with the bike. Valve cover, you don't forget your cam chain tensioner bolt, engine plugs, and you can test fire after that. Right on, guys. That is how you shim the valves on a 2002 to 2006 CRF450.